Food security a major concern on the continent. It's nothing new, but the Competition Commission is now warning that the numbers of farmers are beginning to decline as well. The dairy sector alone has lost over half of its farmers. Small-scale farmers also struggling to get sufficient yields to stay in business. Let's get a reaction to find out why it's happening and what do we do about it, and just how much of a crisis is this. Agri SA Executive Director, always a pleasure, Christo van der Rheede, joining us on the show. Christo, morning to you. It sounds like I'm painting a very bleak picture. How worried are you?
We are not worried at all. I think the statement by the Competition Commission needs to be investigated. It's a bit misleading. Yes, there's a large-scale consolidation taking place, especially within the commercial sector as a result of production costs going up. We know that fertilizers cost has gone up by almost 50%, 60%. Our farmers are struggling to compete with their counterparts in the rest of the world due to dumping. We've seen large-scale dumping of poultry in South Africa and so forth. And if you can bring in cheaper goods from overseas, then it makes it very difficult for you to remain competitive as a farmer. And then the issue of financing. I always say you can dish out land left, right, and center, but if you don't have access to production loans on an annual basis, because you need money to finance the purchase of fertilizer, seed, and pay for your labor and for your diesel and so forth. And that is the big challenge that we currently face.
Well, that's not really surprising, is it, Christo? It always comes down to the rands and cents of the whole thing. Off the back of COVID-19, I'm sure there's been a lesser demand for produce because many South Africans have lost their job. As a result of that, demand has gone down. There's been oversupply. The price has come down. We know how demand and supply works. So when we talk about food security, is that something that we've got to worry about as of today, middle of September, or is this something we've got to look out for in, say, a year or two from now?
Yes, I would say there's a number of factors that are critical. One is the issue of the land bank. Land bank has been struggling for some time now, and they've given us an indication that they will not be in a position to fund our farmers in South Africa. Now, that for us is a big concern. Yes, many farmers have been able to shift over to the commercial banks, but there's a large percentage of small-scale farmers that do not have that capability, or they are not even regarded as credit-worthy by our commercial banks. And that's where government needs to step in. We will have to come up with a new plan to ensure that our small-scale farmers have access. Because, yes, at a macro scale, we don't have any concerns around food security. We are massive exporters of fruit and meat and so forth. But at the local level, that's where your biggest challenge is.
When in my introduction to speaking to you, dairy farmers losing half of our farmers, I understand as well. How accurate is that stat, Christo? And then how do we try and stop that from happening? What's the reason behind the exodus of dairy farmers? What's happening?
Dairy farming is one. It's a highly expensive operation because you need to have very advanced technologies available. You need to have all kinds of other systems in place, especially your feeding system, because those dairy cows, need to be fed with specific animal fodder and a mix of other things that are critical for them to deliver milk. But what is our big challenge? Our big challenge relates to our municipalities that are not in a position to service our roads, the local infrastructure, because that milk must be picked up on from farms and it needs to be transported. Now, if I'm a processor and I need to weigh up risk, then I tell myself, sorry, I'm not going to send my truck on these roads that are completely dilapidated. So that's the one issue. The second issue relates to the importing, the dumping of milk in South Africa, especially from our European counterparts. And that makes it very difficult for our farmers to compete. Our biggest challenge, obviously, is the lack of government subsidies. Our European counterparts, our American counterparts are highly subsidized. In South Africa, there's a no-no, and now we've got a big challenge with South African revenue services that still want to come up with all kinds of additional tax measures, and that makes it even more difficult for farmers to survive.
It seems like there's a lot of potholes in the road, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase, and it looks like the supply chain is also a major issue. It's like the competition. You're not playing on the same playing field. It's a big issue, but I appreciate you unpacking it for us. Let's see if we can't get some reaction to what you've had to say to us this morning. Christo van der Rheede, always a pleasure joining us on eNCA from Agri SA.